Hi there, welcome back to your virtual studio. I'm Zuri and I'll be leading this core engaging class today. All we'll need is one block and ourselves. We are going to begin lying on our back. So let's get started. We'll have our block nearby, so we'll use that quite early in the practice, not right away, so just leave it nearby so it's ready and accessible for when we do use it. And make yourself comfortable on your back body here. For the first few moments, we're going to greet the breath, and so if you'd like to let the legs be nice and straight, you can be there, or keep the knees bent. Take your pick. And then just take a moment to settle in, tune in to your own breath. Your hands might be resting on the floor or on your mat, or you might bend your elbows like I have and just sort of rest the hands around the lower belly, just gathering a little feedback from your breath. Feeling the movement of the breath into your hands, perhaps. Let's start to invite a little movement next. If the knees aren't already bent, let's start to bend the knees, placing the feet on the mat and bringing space in between the knees, so just about hip-width distance apart. And we're finding a comfortable distance between feet and hips, enough where when you kind of tilt your pelvis back, you feel you feel access to that movement. So sometimes if we have the feet really, really close, we kind of get locked in here and it's hard to move the pelvis. So we don't need the feet to be too close. Find enough space here where your pelvic bowl can tilt forward and back. And that might be that you have your hands, you're welcome to have your hands at the side of the hips here, just to feel how the lower back can get heavier onto the mat when we tilt the pelvis backwards, so pubic bone pointing up. And then when we point the pubic bone forward and we kind of drag the tailbone up against the mat, there's a little change in the lower back. And then we tilt forward and back. And it's not really so much about the spine moving or even the rib cage moving. Initiate the movement from the pelvic bowl. Right? So really low, below the navel is where this movement is really taking place. And see if the next time that you tilt your pelvis backwards, where the pubic bone is lifting towards the navel, we're going to move towards a slow bridge pose, but we're really trying to find the segments of our spine. So can we slowly lift each little vertebra off the floor until we find just a slight little bridge pose here. It's not the biggest expression of a back bend, but we are feeling the engagement of the legs. Because we're working against gravity here, we're going to make sure that we're pointing the tailbone towards the backs of the knees. Maybe the glutes are a little bit more engaged here, or just the whole energy through the legs. See if you bring the upper back onto the mat first, then the mid back, then the lower back. Try to segment the spine. And let's move into that bridge pose just a couple more times. Can we make a little flow out of it? So we're going to come right back up, and then come right back down. Let's invite the arms to come with us. So the next time that you tilt the pelvis back, lifting the spine, let the arms come with you until the back of your hands find the floor. Keep the hands back there as you bring the trunk and spine back down. Segment by segment. Keep the hands there as you wave the spine back up. And down, take your time. Let's add one more. And then the next time that the pelvis comes down, let the arms also come back down, pointing towards the bottom of the mat, just kind of back to center here. Let's take a breath. Move the arms next into a T shape. So let's make sure we have a little bit of space here to have the arms out into a T shape, and keep the pelvis. So if you kind of relax the belly and the pelvis, that's fine. Tilt the pelvis back, and again, try to find a sense of that heaviness of the lower back hugging the mat and really staying on the mat here. We maintain the posterior tilt of the pelvis, pubic bone up towards the navel. Let's keep it there. Take a nice breath in. Exhale and try to trap some air in there. So we really start to get a little heavier towards the mat. We're going to try to maintain some stability in the lower body as we next invite the right hand, the right elbow to bend, to lift off the floor, graze the right fingertips across the chest until you reach the left arm. The right shoulder has already come off the mat. We're leaning into the left side, trying to find the right palm over the left palm, and then maybe even a little bit beyond. But we are trying to keep the right foot heavy, the right side of the pelvis relatively heavy. It can come up a little bit. And then slowly, just as slow as we came up, we're going to come right back down. The elbow comes down slowly, arm comes down, left hand, left elbow, left shoulder. Try to keep the left foot heavy, left side heavy. The left side of the hip can shift a little bit, but try to keep the left foot just a little heavy as the left hand reaches past the right. So we're going nice and slow here, very segmented. Greeting the rotational movement of the spine, but trying to keep it most in the upper body. Let's go about 2 more times here. Try to keep the legs nice and heavy. The pelvis can eventually shift, but we're being a little intentional about what's moving. Just the upper body here. Good. Let's finish out our last cycle here. Maybe there's 1 or 2 more for you. I'll meet you in stillness when you're ready. Let's bring the hands right back down to the sides and readjust for a moment here so that we can invite maybe the feet to create a little space in between, walk them out a little wider, drop the knees to the left and right, windshield wipers. And just invite a little release into the lower trunk for a moment. The pelvis can tilt and shift as much or as little as you'd like. And then we come back to stillness. Bring the feet back towards just about hip width distance apart here. And again, tilt the pelvis backwards. We're actually going to pick up the feet off the floor. And we're going to think about an upside down tabletop. But in this upside down tabletop, we're going to be mindful of our pelvis and we're going to keep a posterior tilt. So I invite you here to think about what the lower back is doing. So let's hug the lower back and notice what happens. Your knees might get closer towards your chest. That's cool. Let's then start here. Take a nice breath in. Inflate the belly, inflate the trunk, and then as you exhale, try to trap some air there. Try to keep your core inflated like a tire, but nice and thick so it's nice and strong. From that engagement, you're going to then try to bring your knees, they can stay just a little bit beyond the pelvis, or you're going to try to bring your knees just over the pelvis here without trying to pick up too much of the lower back off the floor. It's okay if some of it lifts, but try to resist a lot of forward tilting in the pelvis. Next, we're going to bring the hands towards the knees, so just around the tops of the thighs, and slowly bring your hands to push into your knees. Your knees start to push into your hands. So we start to turn on a little bit of turbulence in our trunk, in our abdomen. See if you take another breath here, just pushing hands to knees, knees to hands. It's okay if the lower back isn't completely pressed onto the mat, but it's not a big gap, and it's not that we're relaxing and letting the pelvis tilt forward. There is the effort of a slight posterior tilt. Slowly here, relax the feet, relax the hands, relax the trunk, back to windshield wipers. And let it go. Good. Now let's come back again to stillness and just keeping the trunk nice and relaxed for a moment without thinking too much about it. Pick up the left or the right foot and then place it right back down. Pick up the opposite foot. And we're going to just move into this little slow, very kind of effortless march. And as you do this march, notice what's moving in your trunk, your rib cage, how the pelvis kind of tilts and sways naturally. And then let's see if we find a little bit of stability from our next exhale. Maybe starting to create less movement. So inviting slowly, little by little, more tension. So we're not holding the breath, we're just slowly turning on the core and seeing if we can create less movement of the ribs and pelvis. And if we maintain that effort or enough of that effort, can you then keep both feet off the ground? So eventually we start to lift both feet off the ground, continue to then march, maybe tap the heel of each foot, one after the other. And if this feels like too much, just continue the opposite march. So keep the feet low and come up. Otherwise, see if you stay up and go low, then back up. Trying to keep the lower back, the rib cage, the trunk relatively steady, using the tension of our core. Good. Slowly here, relax. You might hug the knees in towards the chest. Release this how you'd like. Let's go ahead next and find our block. Now we're going to take the block and we're going to place the block just over the right knee. And we're going to take our left arm. So let's actually we have to take the right foot off the floor. So we're really going to turn things on now. Right foot is off the floor. Block is right here. So just about this long, tall setting. And we take the left hand, we're going to make a nice fist, and we're going to hold our block with our left arm. Left elbow is bent just about 90 degrees here, and we're kind of just holding with a fist our block against the leg. Leg pushes into block, block is already pushing, or hand is already pushing back into it. All right, let's stay here, reconnect to that sense of posterior tilt in the trunk. Let's turn that power on. So take a nice breath in, exhale, trap some of that air, and pick up the left foot off the floor. So now both feet are off the floor. Right arm is going to reach up towards the ceiling, right fingertips. Let's see how this feels. We're still pushing energy of left hand into the right leg into the block. Let's take a nice breath in here. Trap that tension in your core. It's still engaged. And on the next breath, see if you move your right or your left foot down, right arm back. Try to keep the left knee bent as you come right back. Now, it doesn't matter if you're moving in an inhale or an exhale. It is the first exhale that you kind of set the tension with. So you do take a nice breath in, the belly is soft. As you exhale, we build tension and we keep it even beyond the next in and out breaths. So as long as the belly's not soft, we're just going to continue here. Opposite arm, so contralateral movement. Left foot, right arm, just until you feel a little bit of your own exhaustion. Good exhaustion, not going into painful limits. There doesn't have to be an exact number, but we are going to stop soon if you haven't already. Let's give it a little pause now. Maybe the next time everything comes up, it all softens and comes down together. Relax, maybe with the block at the side. There might be movement or however you'd like to release this. Stillness might be perfectly suitable. Switching sides. Block goes just behind the left knee. Let's pick up that left foot and take the right arm, bending the right elbow, make a fist with your right hand and press that block into that left knee. Go ahead and find the engagement we need in the pelvis and trunk so that the right foot now can meet the left leg. So just hovering around the same space, and the left arm lifts up. Let's see how that feels here. Just a little static stillness to begin with. This helps us find that nice engaged core. So let's go ahead and find a nice breath in. Exhale, trap the air that you need. Keep that core engagement. Then send right foot forward, left arm back. See if it's just a hinge of your right hip rather than straightening the leg. You can straighten the leg, and in fact, we'll do a little similar movement with the leg straight in a moment. But for this first one, see if you can keep the knee bent. And you can bring the knee up, even if it taps your arm. You can go a little further into your hip flexion. Take your time with it. One side might do more than the other or less than the other. That's fine. Just until you feel a little bit of good warmth, a little bit of good exhaustion. That's when we know the tissue is starting to respond. We're giving it work to do. That's when adaptation begins. Good. Let's start to then slow it down. If you need to add a few more, go ahead. Otherwise, take a pause when you're ready. Let's leave the block off to the side. We're going to get right back to it, but we're going to move through a little spinal segmentation. One more bridge pose here. Go ahead and slowly bring each vertebrae off the floor here. And then segment right back down. Hands can be on the floor, hands can be anywhere you'd like. Let's do that one more time. Let's see if we hold this next bridge pose here. So thinking about the engagement we need from the pelvis. And we're going to think of the pelvis as the floor of our core, which it is. Our pelvic floor is the floor of our core. So when we talk about our hips, there's a little connection to the core here. Let's slowly bring the spine right back down. And take a little pause, little breath. The knees might collapse in towards one another, or you can add a few windshield wipers here. Let's come right back, moving into our next segment. We're still on our back. We take the block again, and now instead of contralateral movement, we're gonna stick to the same side, and this is what it's gonna look like here. So let's actually start with the right side, just so you can see this side of me a little bit better. We're gonna take the block again to the left side. You're welcome to do whichever side you'd like. Actually, it doesn't really matter. So here we go. Take that left foot off the floor, and your left arm is going to hold the block against the leg. So we're gonna keep our left elbow nice and bent here. Find a nice comfortable place, right? So just see if that feels comfortable. And what has to happen next for the opposite leg to meet you, for the right arm to meet you? And let's just take a little bit of a breath here. Keep some energy of left arm into the left leg. And when you're ready, start to then move. This is where you're welcome to straighten the right leg as you extend it forward and back. And then you're even welcome to bring the right arm all the way forward and back. Bending and just kind of going to the range, so full flexion of the hip as the knee bends up towards the chest, and then it can lengthen as it reaches away. Try to keep the left side nice and steady. And we're gonna go ahead and start to switch to the other side. Take your time here. If you're still working on this, if you're still feeling like you can go on, there is no rush. Otherwise, we start to slow it down, bringing the right foot down first, then easing in to release the work of the left side. Taking your time to switch it up. Right arm is going to hold onto the block against the left or the right leg. Go ahead and readjust your elbow here. Nice and easy here. See what it's like to hold arm against block and leg. And then reset. Left foot comes up. Left arm comes up. Try to keep the tension in your core. How are we feeling with that lower back nice and steady and stable? As long as there's not a lot of shifting anymore from the pelvis or rib cage. Continue when you're ready. You already have that good tension set. Can you then control the movement of leg and arm? So remember that the in and the out breath doesn't really matter where it goes, because the movement might start to be faster than the breath. But we set the tension through that initial breath that helps us engage the core and keep the pressure as we produce power. I'm going to start to take my last cycle here. When you're ready, allow the left side to relax, and then the right side can come down. Take a moment. I'm going to just take a little pause with my arms out, knees will collapse. You're welcome when you're ready to either find stillness or maybe move into a few windshield wipers. Let's invite a little bit of movement after all. So if you didn't already move into some windshield wipers, invite a little release because we are going to start to flip over next. So maybe the next time the hips roll towards the left or the right, let's turn onto our side and move towards a tabletop position. Take a little moment here to set your neutral spine. Keep pressing energy into the hands, into the arms. Send the right leg back. Keeping the energy of your trunk engaged, can we think of squeezing the right glute next? Lift the right leg off the ground. Let the right hand get a little heavier. The left hand can crawl forward. It can stay on the floor or lift off the mat. Table balance here. Keep that engagement through the trunk, through the upper body. Can we keep it steady as the left hand comes down and the right knee comes down? Left leg moves back right away, keeping things steady. Left glute engages, left leg lifts. Push into the left hand, right fingertips become light. They can reach forward for table balance. Maintaining tension through the core, through the trunk. Slowly release the hand, release the knee. Downward facing dog. So keep the energy, keep pushing through the arms, tuck the toes, lift the hips. Notice the overhead reach of this downward facing dog. Can the shin bones and thigh bones press in the opposite direction as the pelvis lifts away from the hands, maintaining length through the entire spine and trunk. Plank pose, and then right back to down dog. Let's make a little flow out of it between these two shapes. Now maintaining a grip of palms, hands firmly working against the mat. Let's pause at our next plank, bringing the knees slowly down, keeping the toes tucked or untucked for a kneeling position. Toes tucked will bring you a little bit of a stretch for the bottoms of the feet. That's an invitation. You don't have to take it. Take a little breath here. Deepen the breath again. Let the light back in if the eyes closed. Come back to downward facing dog. Hands find the mat. Separate the knees, tuck the toes, and elevate the hips. Plank pose for the last time. You're welcome here to move towards a side plank, and I'll invite you into that side plank by first widening the feet a little bit wider than the hands, rotating the heels towards the right or left, and as you shift the load, so if I rotate towards the right, I have the load on my right arm. My left foot stays forward, my left arm comes up, but I have the energy of lifting the right side away from the mat. So keeping, again, a little bit of that core connection, switching sides. Try to keep the legs or the feet wide so that the heels invite the pivot, then the rotation through the legs, the trunk. Feel free to pause at one last plank or move through a little flow of your choice. Maybe it's another set of side plank variations. When you're ready, I invite you to find a shape of stillness. That might be a child's pose variation. It might be a kneeling position. Let's surrender more and more to the breath. Perhaps Staying as you are in a kneeling position, if it's comfortable for you to stay and digest the practice that way. Otherwise, I invite you to change your shape into whichever might be most comfortable. So it can be a back lying position, or you can stay kneeling and just maybe place a block or a pillow underneath the sits bones to add a little more comfort. Whichever shape you choose, the idea is not to create a lot of energy or power to sustain or maintain that shape. So if you're seated, allow the pelvis, hips, and legs to just find a comfortable shape. If you come onto your back, see where the legs would like to be. They can remain bent or they can remain lengthened. Most importantly, we move to a place where it's just the breath that continues to move next. And the body has nothing left to do. There's no more balancing or power production to do. Let's surrender now to the breath. Begin to deepen your breath. Observe the revitalizing energy of this new in-breath and allow it to guide you through any organic movement, and so that you may gently shift and come to a final upright seat for your practice. And here we'll take a few breaths to seal our practice together. Let the hands rest comfortably somewhere over knees or thighs. And give yourself permission to step into your mind and heart space for a moment. Perhaps there, can you hold room for gratitude today, for anything that connects with you when you think of holding gratitude for something? And from that space of gratitude, perhaps there's an intention or a manner in which you can extend your mindfulness practice beyond this moment. Whatever that might be for you, perhaps seal it into your mind and heart space and into your practice. With 3 breaths, let's seal the practice together. Hands can meet at heart center in Anjali Mudra. Let's take a breath in through the nose and a full breath out. A breath in through the nose and a full breath out. Final breath. And as you exhale, perhaps bowing to your space and practice, recognizing your breath and yourself as your own best teacher.